Inside your spotlight this morning, we have the Honorable Marvin Gonzales, Minister of Public Utilities, joining us to chat a little bit about how we can conserve water and what WASA is doing to conserve water during this dry season. Good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning, Rocas. Good morning, Trinidad and Tobago.
How are you doing this morning?
A bit tired, but nothing to do with any carnival activity.
You sure?
Nothing to do
I
with
know carnival is back and all, no, and I have plenty Wetfets.
Well, the fact that they can have Wetfets, it means that they have water available to them.
All right, which is a good thing, right?
Which is a good thing, but it could also be a bad thing because it does not aid in water conservation, exactly what we're coming here to do.
All right, so tell me some of the tips that we need to be aware of, or the things that we should be aware of when it comes to conserving water in dry season.
Well, the first thing citizens need to understand, why do we need to impose upon ourselves water restrictions, especially during the dry season? Most of our water, about 60% of our WASA's water, come from surface water sources, meaning from rivers, streams, springs, etc.
Right.
And during the dry season, because of the heat and the dryness in the temperature, the water levels in the rivers, they drop considerably, especially rivers in East Trinidad and parts of Tobago. So WASA produces approximately 240 million gallons of water per day. That's during the rainy season. And during dry season, that falls to about 220 or 215. It could even go to 200.
Okay.
It means that 30 million gallons of water, 30 million gallons of water that the authority would normally have during the rainy season is no longer available to it. So it impacts upon the authority's ability to provide the citizens of Trinidad and Tobago with the supply of water on the schedule that they're accustomed to. So during the dry season, water restrictions are imposed because of the lack of the availability of the supply, because of dry conditions. And the authority tends to, on a yearly basis, encourage citizens to engage in water conservation. Water conservation simply meaning that you manage the supply that is available to you. Oftentimes we get up in the morning and we take a shower and we allow the taps to run. We brush our teeth, we allow the taps to run, we wash our cars with hose as opposed to using a bucket. We clean our yards with hose from the water supply as opposed to utilizing a broom. We have running taps that runs constantly, and we don't take measures.
Sometimes a leak or something.
Sometimes a leak. Sometimes on our tanks, we don't put in the appropriate valve to prevent. And all of these things, you can just imagine, all of these things happening in individual homes all across the country would result in the losses of millions of gallons of water. It may look simple for one resident, but if it happens all across the board, it can result in millions of gallons of water being lost. People watering their lawns, especially during the dry season, all of these things contribute to your neighbors and your other communities not having a supply of water. And that's the reason why we encourage citizens to conserve.
Now, it's interesting, right? Because people will hear this and they would say, yes, they agree that we need to conserve water. But then I turn around and I see it as carnival, and there are people who are doing Wetfets, and we see gallons upon gallons of water being sprayed into the atmosphere. Is it that they get special permissions to be able to do that, or a special limitation, or just so that people on the outside understand the difference between what you're asking versus those situations?
So what happened in that case, my understanding is that the promoters of the FET, they purchase the water through special water trucking, private water truck facilities that are available to them. The water can be purchased from, well, most of the water, of course, is purchased from the Water and Sewage Authority and private water production facilities. We don't have much of them, but they purchase the water through their private water trucking facility, and they go to those FETs to have these types of activities. But again, that is water that can be utilized in our schools and our hospitals and our public institutions and our homes, etc. But it shows that as a nation, we need to change our approach. The idea of Wetfets and all of these things may sound good. It might be enjoyable to all of us. I mean, as a younger man, I would have participated in it, and it was quite enjoyable.
I'm going to call it therapy, Minister. Let's chalk it up to therapy. Some sort of release therapy that people have to during carnival.
You can do foam.
Foam requires water as well, no? All right.
Not much.
Tell me about what WASA is doing, because we talk about managing our leaks on a personal level, but I mean, when we drive down the road, sometimes we see leaks in the road, we see pipes that are busted. What is WASA doing to be able to manage and conserve water?
About 2 or 3 years ago, WASA had approximately 5,000 or 6,000 leaks on its system, and we decided that we are going to tackle the issue of leaks, because we cannot be encouraging citizens to engage in conservation practices at their homes, etc. And the authority is not living and showing the example that is needed to have, that citizens can have with respect to the wastage of water. So we have tackled that on a consistent basis, and I can tell the country that WASA has reduced its leak backlog from about 5,000 or 6,000 leaks how many years ago, 2-3 years ago, to right about 500 at this point in time. And we're aiming to wipe out that 500 based on the last discussions I've had with the management of WASA to wipe out that 500 leaks by the end of February, early March, so that when citizens report leaks on a daily basis, in a day or 24 hours, the authority can respond to those leaks. So that is one of the things that we are doing, and we are tackling in a robust manner. But some of the things that cause leaks on WASA system, of course, is the heavy pressure that you have, the age infrastructure, the booster stations that you have to construct to send water to the highest levels. It results in a number of pressure having to be applied to get water to the highest level. And because your infrastructure is so aged, it causes leaks in the system. So what we are doing also is engaging and rather investing in technology, pressure reducing valves on all our booster stations, so you can manage the pressures on your distribution system as well as your transmission system to reduce the incidence of leaks. Over the last 2 or 3 years, we have removed a lot of our aged infrastructure, high leakage pipelines across the country. We have tackled it in a very methodological way, because based on the data available, we can tell you the lines that are prone to leakage. And what we have done over the last 2 years is remove those lines and replace them with new lines. And as a result of that, we are seeing where 2 years ago or a year ago, it was about 100, 120 leaks being reported on a daily basis. That has now been reduced to about 60 or 50 leaks because of the approach that we have taken in improving the infrastructure across the board. So WASA is doing its part, and WASA's part is quite critical. We are also drilling a number of wells to get additional water, especially in the Aripo area. We are drilling about 3 wells, and that is to supplement the shortfall of water of the Hollis Reservoir. Most of our reservoirs, with the exception of one, is in a healthy state. The Hollis Reservoir is a reservoir that is always vulnerable to climatic conditions. Right now, it is below the long-term average, and we are managing the supply in that area. But to prevent the imposition of restrictions, especially in the coming years, we have decided to drill a number of wells that will supplement the Hollis Reservoir when it falls in production. And we expect those wells to come into production in the next 2 to 3 months.
So just for those who may not understand, when you drill new wells, is it that you are looking for new fresh water supplies?
Absolutely. So so you have your surface water sources from your rivers, your streams where the water is extracted from the rivers, and and your groundwater wells is water being extracted from your underground reservoirs, right? You have huge volumes of water being stored in our underground aquifers. So the wells are drilled where the aquifers are located, and the water is extracted from below the ground. Now that water is a little bit more resilient to climatic conditions because it is below the Earth's surface. But of course, it can be impacted by heat and extreme rainfall, because if you don't have rain, the reservoirs below the ground or the aquifers will not be replenished. You understand? So we need to manage all how you take it. It doesn't matter whether the water is extracted from your surface or your underground reservoirs. You need to manage the resource, because once you impose your conservation at the domestic level, it means that more water, millions of gallons of water, can become available to distribute to unserved and underserved communities.
One of the things that's always interesting to me is, have we ever thought about, or are we looking into desalination at any point? Because, I mean, we live on an island, right?
Yes.
So water is, always around us.
Yes.
What are some of the challenges we face when it comes to the possibility of desalination?
Well, Trinidad and Tobago is perhaps one of the only Caribbean country that where the state utility company does not own a desalination plant. We have 2 large desalination plants in Trinidad and Tobago, perhaps the 2 largest plants, Desalination, which is in Point Lisas, and then you have Seven Seas. Much people don't know much. Seven Seas. That is in Point Fortin.
Okay.
Desalination produces about 40 million gallons of water from desalination water.
Right.
And Seven Seas produces somewhere about 6 million gallons. So about 46 million gallons of water
Right.
in Trinidad and Tobago that go into the distribution grid is from desalination water. So,
That water from those two desalination plants go into the grid as well?
Of course.
They do, because my understanding, the one in Point Lisa serves the estate only.
only 15 million gallons of water go towards the estate.
Okay.
The remaining water go into our distribution grid for our domestic customers and what have you. So most of the customers in central parts of South Trinidad, they benefit from their source of water is desalination water.
Nice.
And parts of Point Fortin, Chatham, and some of those areas, their source of water is desalination water. So yes, desalination water, it has been part of us, for a very long time. And there are other countries in the Caribbean where they have little access to rivers and streams and underground aquifers, wells, etc. The only source of water is desalination water.
Yeah.
Of course, it is a very expensive water to treat. And the rates that we charge for water in Trinidad and Tobago, where we have not adjusted those rates for over 25 years, the government spends billions of dollars in purchasing the water and collects very little from outdated rates. So the money has to come from somewhere.
Right.
And therefore, the WASA has to depend on subventions on the Ministry of Finance to be able to pay for that very expensive water. There's one area in Moruga that we are looking at putting a plant because there's no wells that are available or surface water facility that is available. I'm talking about Laloon, Marak, and those places. They're experiencing some really difficult water supply issues. And there was a small desalination plant there a couple of years ago that produced about 500,000 gallons of water. It was poorly designed, and it went out of commission about 10 or 15 years ago, and nothing was done to ensure that the people get an efficient supply of water. So we are looking at the idea of putting back a small desalination plant. We will correct the engineering flaw that took place there that prevented the plant from continuing its operation. We expect to have that plant in operation before the end of 2024. And it is expected to produce about 1 million gallons of water. Okay. So Moruga and surrounding areas of Moruga will now have a more reliable supply of water. So the issue of desalination water, it will always be with us because climate change, the fact that we don't have available to us large aquifers below the surface. Our rivers are polluted, not producing the volume and of water that we experience and we enjoyed for 20, 30 years ago. The amount of quarrying that is taking place in East Trinidad, the quality of our water is compromised significantly, and therefore we have to explore other sources of water as we look to have a more so.
Before we wrap, Minister, tell me a little bit about how the metering process has been going, because I know you've been rolling out slowly but surely more metering so that we have a better gauge as to how much people are actually using the water, so the data is more accurate.
Yeah. So you don't start a metering program at the domestic level. You start at your production facilities because you must know how much water you're producing. Then you meter your transmission facilities because you need
how much
to
sending out,
how much you're sending out,
right,
and where you are sending out to the various areas.
Right.
All right. And then you establish your DMAs, meaning your district metered areas, so you can tell how much water is needed in Port of Spain, how much water is needed in Lavantil or Diego Martin or in Pinal, Siparia, Tobago. And once you ensure that those areas are covered with meters, your production facilities, your transmission facilities, your district meters, then you go in to domestic meters because you are measuring the supply of water at every stage, and you will be able to tell from a real-time perspective the volume of water that is being consumed and what is being wasted. So what we are doing, our production facilities are being metered. A significant portion of the production facilities are already being metered. Our transmission system, Hollis, Navet, all of these transmission systems are being metered at this point in time. And WASA under the IDB program is also looking to put together the district meters. Once all of that in place, we will go full-fledged into domestic metering. About 6 or 7 1,000 of our commercial customers are already being metered.
They
at this
already
point in
have
time.
metered.
Yeah.
Nice, man. Well, Minister, let me thank you so much for joining us this morning and giving us a little bit of an update and some water conservation tips as we get into the dry season a little bit further.
And it's good to come and talk about water conservation and some of these light topics without having to treat with issues.
Don't worry, I'm sure the issues will come up again by the time you come back next time. Well, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Do enjoy the rest of your day. All right, ladies and gentlemen, that's the Minister of Public Utilities, the Honorable Marvin Gonzales, joining us this morning to chat a little bit about water conservation during the dry season and, of course, give us an update on the metering as well as all the great things that WASA has been up to. Let's take a quick break. When we come back, we collaborate with the Art Society of Trinidad and Tobago to bring you a brand new artist on set. Stay tuned.